Welcome to Life Planning 101, brought to you by Smart Money Group and Kennedy Financial Services in Eastland, Texas. Tune in every week as we share important information to help you and your family live life on purpose. Insurance, investments, legacy and tax planning, and much more. All covered now on Life Planning 101.
Good morning and welcome into Life Planning 101. My name is Angela Robinson with Smart Money Group and Kennedy Financial Services the day after Super Bowl 2025. Now, I can't say that I'm just ecstatic that the Eagles won. I am a Cowboys fan, but my husband did make light of this yesterday because I'm really not a KC fan. And he made light of this. He said, aren't you supposed to ultimately root for people in your division? Back when you were in high school, if you weren't the ones going to state, but someone in your division was going to state, you were going to be rooting for them. I said, oh yes, exactly. And I can actually say, go Eagles. So I was excited about that. But I was on this morning. I always like to, kind of see what people are saying after a Super Bowl, all the commercials and the halftime shows and this and that. And I saw this little meme and it said, if you were sitting there scratching your head during the halftime performance thinking, what am I watching? What is this? There's a good chance that you're over 40 years old. Oh, yes, I started to feel my age. But it was perfect segue into what we're going to be talking about today, which is understanding how other generations think about money. Yes, this is a great little op-ed educational piece. By the way, we're going to publish a written version in Weekly Life Lessons this week. Be sure to visit us online, www.kennedy-financial.com. If you're not already signed up for that, sign up for our Weekly Life Lessons. Every week we try to put in great relevant content, and this week is no other. And really, this show is for you. This is something that we always talk about, the fact that we are more in a psychology business and a finance business in a lot of ways. But, really, if you're raising kids or raising parents, as I like to call it, there's much could be the same about you, is that you need to be in psychology to understand the way they think. Because if you just try to keep pounding the table, they should think the way that I think. Yeah, that's not going to go very well for you. And you should have probably learned that already by now, because probably a past generation treated you that way, right? And so we can just keep on with the same old thing, kids these days. How many times have you heard that or even said it? Or you might be even saying parents these days. And yes, your children will be saying this about you someday if they are not all ready. So what we are going to educate you on is a little bit of fun stuff today. And we're going to pick on the generations. I'm just going to warn you. I'm going to pick on them. And no generation is perfect. Not even yours, not mine, certainly not mine. And we'll get to that in a minute. But in order for this to be meaningful, we need to be able to cut to the chase. Because I think at the end of the day, you usually are trying to help a parent. You're trying to help a child with their finances. And you can't figure out why they think the way they think or how to get through to them. And that's my hope, is that we give you some bearings. Obviously, we can't cover everything in the short time that we have together right here on Life Planning 101, but we can give you some bearings. And then I want to encourage you to use those bearings to go out and kind of do your own research on these generations. And, if you really love your family members, this is not to make you feel bad, but if you really love your family members, start with trying to understand them rather than making them, see things the way that you see them. Because I'm just going to tell you, they're not. They're not, unless they're the ones listening to this and they're going out. And in fact, it really would be good for both of you to do the same thing so you can understand each other. But if you're trying to help them, you need to understand where they're coming from. And so I want to start by picking on the silent generation. And I'll pick on the silent generation because most of them are probably not listening to this show. In fact, I doubt any one of them is listening to Life Planning 101. It could be. There's been a few over the years that have surprised me. But if you're a baby boomer, you know this generation very, very well. And you know this generation as the generation that grew up on the heels of the Great Depression and World War II. And every one of us, even me as a grandchild of this generation, has stories that we can kind of giggle about I know Brett's always talking about his grandmother, that everywhere they go, she'd open her purse and she'd have like mounds of ketchup packets and mayonnaise packets and extra napkins and this and that. But when you live without, then you never want to live without again. And they had that. The hoarders, these stories that are out there, they're real and they have a reason behind them. And they emulate the old adage that we are a sum of our experiences. This generation, they were very sparing. They are very sparing with every single dollar. And they saved a lot and a lot of cash. A lot of cash hidden everywhere. If you've helped a parent or a grandparent in this generation with their finances, you probably found a few things that shocked you. Perhaps there's cash stashed in, I'll just say, the freezer. I'm not going to give any other, I'll let your imagination go wild. Or, they have an endless amount of bank accounts. Or if you settled their state, which, by the way, they never even talked about with you ahead of time, right? That it may have taken you a minute to find everything that they own. Not even just a minute. It may have taken you years to find everything they own. You may have closed out the estate, thought you got rid of everything, and then you found more. And that's normal. That's normal. That was that generation. The most important characteristic about this generation was that they were silent. The majority of them, they just didn't or don't talk about money because it was very depressing for them to talk about money growing up. So they grew up in an environment that you just didn't talk about money. And so they didn't talk about money. And they often have left a mess for their kids simply because their kids knew nothing. They didn't do it intentionally. They didn't do it because they wanted to be mean. They did it because they didn't know any different. And so you might have a mom or dad that's needing help at the end of life in this generation. And this has made things pretty frustrating, and I get it. Perhaps you're an heir to this generation. You may not even have known where a will is, or much less what it said, right? And why it said what it said, which could be very painful. And I point you back to a show we did a few weeks ago just on that subject about communicating your wishes, even if they're not fair or equal. It's extremely important because it can be extremely shattering for a child to really not understand why things happen the way it happened. And we talk about, in my family, breaking generational curses all the time. And we put them on the table. When we start to see something rise up that has been a theme in our family, we want to crush it, right? So I'm sure you have those things in your family. And it's not that this generation was a horrible generation. In fact, they were called the Great Generation. They were an amazing generation. They brought us out of these horrible times in history. And they're the parents of the boomers, the largest generation in the world that ever took place, right? So they're a great generation. But that's why I say no generation doesn't have its flaw. And we're going to pick on them first because, heck, they're not listening. So now that we've done that, let's go to the boomers. All right. We are some of our experiences. Just remember this. And many boomers have taken heed to what they endured with their parents. They despise the thought of their children having to go through what they went through. They want it better for your kids. They don't want their children to be taking care of them. And they don't want to leave a mess. Their answer to these problems is simple, though very different than what you might expect me to say. Spend it before we can't. Yeah. So there was a recent Schwab survey, just really recent actually, and they interviewed more than 1,000 high net worth families. And I don't know what they call high net worth families. It's usually in excess of $1 million or somewhere in there. But they showed that these families that 79% of boomers were on board with this type of thinking. That's like 8 out of 10 that say, let's just spend it so we don't have these problems. And the reality, though, it is really quite different because this is the wealthiest generation in our country at this moment. Although, this generation, they do enjoy the finer things in life. You can thank the boomers for the reason that we have iPhones. You can thank the boomers for the reason that we have this thing called keeping up with the Joneses. That is the essence of who the boomers are. They do enjoy the finer things in life. They do enjoy the name brands. They were taught to work hard. They were a result of that silent generation and have incredible work ethic. And they have saved a lot of money doing that. And they've inherited some money. So most have done just that. They've accumulated a lot and there's a disconnect between spending it all and this issue. Because they plan to spend it, they don't plan. They don't plan. And ironically, it puts their heirs in the same boat that they were in because they didn't plan. They don't want their kids to have to take care of it, but they don't have a plan for that. Why is that? They want to be able to spend it all, but they don't have a plan for that. And then they end up leaving this mess behind, and not only a mess, but a chunky, really weird mess that their kids have to figure out, and ultimately they're back in the same boat that their parents were in, and they're not liking this situation as well. And also, this isn't a very healthy generation, and we're seeing that, right? There's a lot of news around this at the moment. We talk about this all the time, that we may be living longer, but we're not living healthier. And so I can't stress enough about how important it is to have a quality of life long-term healthcare plan, which, by the way, we have lots of literature on that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm not just talking about the money, okay? I'm talking about the plan behind it. If you really want your kids to be taken care of, you need a plan to make sure that that's happening. And this is a generation that's just not doing that because they don't see it as a priority, because they're just like, I'm going to spend it. So there's our boomers, okay? I'll quit picking on them. I'll go to the next one here because we only got a limited amount of time. But I want to skip a generation, okay? And I know this is where the stick is for you Gen Xers. I get it. But there's a reason why I want to come back to you, okay? I'm not forgetting you, I promise. So let's skip a generation, and I want to talk about the millennials for a second. And the reason why is most millennials are the children of the baby boomers. And so years ago, I was actually at a conference with my dad, which was a lot of fun. There was a gentleman named Jason Dorsey. He's an acclaimed generational speaker, and he was hilarious. He's quite the comedian, talking about the different generations. And man, did he just nail my dad to a T, talking about the pen in his pocket, the cash in his pockets, which, by the way, we actually had to stop at Joseph A. Banks on the way home, and we go in the store, and they're like, we don't take cash at this register. Oh boy, I was rolling. I was absolutely rolling. This is a reality. He talked about a story that has been ingrained in me because it makes total sense. It makes all the sense in the world, especially as someone, I'm on the older side of this generation, but I am a millennial. And that's a big step for me because I've never wanted to say that out loud. And you're going to start to understand this why in a second. But he talked about the fact that this is a split generation with two mindsets. And it's boiled down to a key moment, okay? And by the way, one half of the generation hates the other half of the generation, or hates the way they think. And so they don't want to be associated with that generation. So yeah, okay. So now you're seeing where I'm coming from. But it boiled down to a key moment. And the key moment was high school graduation. Now, baby boomers remember this. I'm going to back up to baby boomers. They remember this as a moment as which they had their bags packed, they were ready to leave, and their parents are saying goodbye. They're telling them, oh, we're so proud of you, son. We're so proud of you, daughter. Now you're on your own. Well, this was pivotal for a lot of those baby boomers because it created a little bit of emotional baggage, and they wanted something better for their kids. So these same boomers would have a different message for their millennial child. When the time came for this child to graduate, pack their bags, and get ready to say goodbye, they'd be telling them, oh, son, daughter, we're so proud of you. And as long as you stay in school and keep good grades, we'll keep paying those bills. Yes, this created the quote-unquote lifetime student. And oh, by the way, like I said, the other half of the generation despises being associated with this. So, yeah, they're really difficult to understand, aren't they? Just need shirts. I'm difficult. To make matters worse on this, though, millennials grew up in a household that was no stranger to spending money. They're the boomers' kids, right? And the good news is, though, reality does eventually hit. Like I said, I'm on the older end of this generation, and they're in their 40s. But today, this generation makes up 75% of the global workforce. Think about that. Yeah, 3/4 of the global workforce is millennials right now. And it's assumed that they're not only going to accumulate wealth like the previous generations, but primarily because of two things. Because they are this, and they value a work-life balance. Okay, so they come out of a generation, they've seen their parents work their tails off and not have that. And there is some emotional baggage behind that. And even though they may be saving, they probably are not saving enough. And don't forget, their parents are planning to spend all their money, right? So it could be problematic. It could be very problematic. And to make matters worse, get this, they take advice wherever they can find it. They discuss finances with everyone. And they tend to fall prey to online financial advice, whether that could be good or bad, and all kinds of other advice. So it is a very complicated generation to try to understand. But, there's an old saying that if it hurts bad enough, people are going to seek help. And I think they're there. I'm seeing it. I'm hearing it. After all, I know a lot of these millennials, and they've waited long enough that they've just tried to do their own thing and get by with talking to neighbor Ned, and it hasn't worked out so well for them. So hopefully they're coming around. Now, by the way, all these stats, they're all going to be on our website with an article with weekly life lessons. The article is going to be understanding how other generations think about money. So you can look those up and refer to those various articles in there. And I encourage you to do that because there's a lot of education about these generations within these articles that have these statistics. So I want to go back and let's talk about Gen X. This is otherwise known as that forgotten generation. Now, this generation is living in a time when they can justify rolling their eyes at every other generation. Rightfully so. They are self-reliant and they're skeptical. Yes, they are a very skeptical generation. I am sure you are fully aware of these individuals that are older than the millennials and not as old as the boomers. They began adulthood with student loans, keeping up with the Joneses, or shall we call them the boomers, in respect to technology, big houses, spending crazes, etc. And then, to make matters worse, they entered a decade of no returns, also known as the Great Recession, as they began saving for retirement. So this took a hit not only in their dollars, but also their mindset, right? Then they were hesitant. So here they are today. They're at their peak earnings age. Let's fast forward out of that mess. It's kind of like, I don't know, dust under the rug, right? I think I'm probably saying that wrong, but that's why you listen to Life Planning 101 to see what I'm going to mess up, right? But today, they're at that peak earnings age. They've climbed themselves out of debt or climbing, and they're feeling the pressure. They want to retire. They don't know if they're going to be able to. And by the way, they're sandwiched between supporting their adult children, and we're going to talk about here in a minute, and their parents. And 61%, get this, 61% of this generation doesn't think that they're going to achieve their retirement goals. And 45% of them don't have a retirement plan at all. Whoa! Here they are getting ready to retirement, and this is that generation. That is painful, and it's a painful reality. And it's probably a need that all of them need that retirement plan sooner than later if it's even going to be on the docket. So Gen X, get busy, slow down, work on yourself, work on your life, work on your future. It's for your benefit. Gen Z, the centennials, the most misunderstood generation because we just don't understand them because they're just young. They really are. Gen X pretty well understands them. That's their children for the most part. And that might be a good thing if you think about it. So here's a generation that is really reality driven. Yeah, they're going through a lot of pain, but if we back up to that silent generation and how incredible of the savers they were and how awesome they were, where did they come from? They came from a very tough generation ahead of them. And I kind of look at this in the same perspective here. Maybe not to that degree. Obviously, the Gen X did not go through the Great Depression and World War II, but they've seen a lot. They've seen a lot of do's and don'ts, and they're living it. They're wishing they would have. They've got the wish of would haves. Really, they really do. And so let's hope they taught their children something different. We will find out. But they did choose a different route with their children. And there's evidence to this because even though the oldest centennial was born in 1997, so that's really not that long ago. That's the oldest centennial. 54% of them are holding some type of investment. They're 1997 to 2012. So like the youngest of them is what? To 12, 13 years old. And 54% of them are holding some type of investment. Get that. That's impressive. That is really impressive. So they're very different though. And this is where it gets very, 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 very confusing. So technology is like in their DNA. This is a strange generation. They're all about efficiency, and their attention span, oh, I don't even know that there's an animal that you can compare it to because it's so short, right? And this is where it kind of starts to hit home. 44% of them say that they're not investing because of one reason. They don't know where to start. So they are truly a generation of information overload. They really are. And their biggest challenge is for someone to help them to slow down long enough to get sound advice. So yeah, good luck. Anyway, Albert Einstein, he once said, any fool can know. The point is to understand. I hope that instead of just throwing your hands up and saying, oh, they just never listen, this helps you understand your parents, your kids. Paradigm shift. Get yourself educated to understand how they might be thinking about money. Because, who knows? If you do this right, it could literally, like we talked about, break those chains for that next generation and shift the tides for future generations so that money is something that's educated within the family. My name is Angela Robinson with Kennedy Financial Services and Smart Money Group in Eastland, Texas. God bless you. Have a great week and continue to live life on purpose. Don't forget, make sure that your money's here to serve you and not the other way around. And join us right here next week on Life Planning 101.
Thank you for joining us for Life Planning 101, brought to you by Smart Money Group and Kennedy Financial Services. If you have questions, you can email them to lifeplanning@kennedy-financial.com. Don't forget to learn how our sister company can assist you with all of your tax and consulting needs. You can find out more at briscoeandassociates.com. Be sure to tune in next week for more Life Planning 101. The opinions expressed herein are those of the firm and are subject to change without notice. The opinions referenced are as of the date of publication and are subject to change due to changes in the market or economic conditions and may not necessarily come to pass. Any opinions, projections, or forward-looking statements expressed herein are solely those of the author, may differ from the views or opinions expressed by other areas of the firm, and are only for general informational purposes as of the date indicated. Securities offered through Calton & Associates Incorporated, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Smart Money Group LLC. Kennedy Financial Services and Smart Money Group LLC are separate entities and are not owned or controlled by Calton & Associates Incorporated.